physical abuse, violence, and incest. That's, I mean, it sounds very broad. Because of the nature of the videos that we're doing, I think what we want to do is to, basically reveal ourselves, which is the way in which we reveal how GLIDE uniquely begins to create support systems and recovery opportunities for people in its community. And I think GLIDE is unique in that it is culturally diverse, culturally specific, that it is very class diverse, it is very sexually oriented diverse, it is diverse in all aspects. And I think that is something that's very unique. I think it's also unique that we are not anonymous. Are you willing, Allison?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. That we are not anonymous, that we speak publicly about our situations and what our experiences have been, and that is really part of the recovery process. So for those of you who do not wish to participate in this, it's completely understandable. We invite you not to do it, or we welcome your participation. So I need to put that on the table, what it is that we're doing. If you have any objections to any of that, I think that you should feel free to say so and not participate. It's okay. What I thought we might do tonight, if it's okay with you, is that we talk a little bit about the history of the women's group in terms of this particular aspect of it. We do have videos on recovery of the Facts on Crack program. I think specifically in regards to our meetings here, survivor meetings, that there is a history that would be interesting maybe to excerpt. And then talk about the importance of talk about your experiences briefly, but also what the support and what GLIDE has meant to you. And I'll just start it. Well, I know we won't have to encourage you to jump in. When Cecil gave a sermon on physical and sexual abuse of women in March of 1990, he asked me if it was all right to talk about his relationship to me as a person who was a survivor of incest. And I said, yes, it was all right. And would it be helpful if I told the community about my experience myself? And I said this completely without thinking about it and realizing the horrible consequences of it. So prior to that time, we had given a sermon related to incest and abuse of women, and invited women to come up, or anyone, men and women, to come up and tell about their experience. And we thought maybe 1 or 2 people would come up. We didn't think anybody would be willing to speak about this particular experience. And 15, 20 people lined up to talk, as you recall. And Mariah, you were one of the women who did that. And that gave me great courage for me to offer to disclose my story. So I did, and it was a really great turning point for me. It was an incredible turning point for me, because it was at that point that I could no longer hide behind all of the defenses that I had created for myself, which I found that I was doing by maintaining a secret, maintaining the incest as a secret, by maintaining the incest and the abuse as part of my exclusivity, my exclusive club. It allowed me to escape. When I disclosed it publicly, it forced me to have to face all the issues related to that. It forced me to split open and face all the addictions, all of the control issues, all of the pain and the horror that was related to that. But that, I'm having brain fade. I think that's symptomatic of not being able to analyze and intellectualize this. But it brought up a lot of other things for me, and I realized that I could no longer escape many things, that I could no longer hide behind being a minister's wife, that I couldn't hide behind being educated, that I couldn't hide behind not smoking crack cocaine, or, in other words, being immune from having to be in recovery. But I realized I had to be in recovery as much as everybody else. And when I started talking about this experience with other women who had come to me, other men and women who had come to me and said, thank you for telling your story, then it further caused me to have to open up, to be real, as you would say, to tell the truth, and to face up to all of the related problems that I had, the control, the half-stepping, what I call half-stepping. And seeing that, and several of us on staff also began talking and realizing that we had a common situation, a common experience, we said, okay, we need to have support groups related specifically to this issue. And at Glide, I think it was very important that we maintain the importance of having culturally diverse and culturally specific groups, support groups around incest, abuse, rape, violence. And so as we have ongoing weekly meetings and ongoing events related to women and violence, women and violation. Perhaps some of you can talk about what your experience has been and the importance of the support groups to you.
Okay. Ready whenever you are.
What's amazing to me is that there are so many women, and we're finding out many more men, who have gone through the experience of incest in some form of violence or violation during their childhood. It's pretty phenomenal. I think in the Glide community, the incidence of incest is much higher because I think people feel that there naturally is a trusting environment and a safe environment and a place where, you know, they can come and reveal themselves without fear.
Mm-hmm. This has been I'm Jane Fox, and this has been a really important place for me to learn about recovery. When you were just talking about speaking out publicly, that rang very true for me. I've been dealing with my incest and abuse for a few years now, but it was always in kind of anonymous groups or in a very small way, and it wasn't very public. And to get up there in front of everybody and tell the truth was the most powerful experience. And that's just perfect words. It just cracked me wide open, and I got plenty of stuff to deal with from that. It was rich.
You cracked a lot of us open too.
It was an incredibly powerful experience. And when our group got started, that first night it was so huge. And what really gave me hope and inspiration was the discussion at the end about the culturally diverse and the culturally specific, because that is so important, and so many times those things are left unsaid and just kind of gone around the rose bush somehow and kind of dealt with in this cute little way. And I just thought, yes, here we are. This is the truth, and we are women, and we are powerful, and we tell the truth. And it was so wonderful to be there. I mean, it really inspired me in the way that I am frequently inspired around here. You know, it just, my strength feeds on your strength, you know? I mean, it's just incredible to me how we work it.
Yeah. Jane, would you be willing to say briefly what your experience was?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I'm a survivor of regular old incest. I was molested by my father and my several uncles and aunts, and assorted family members, and I am also a survivor of childhood ritual abuse. My mother and my father and my aunt and the pediatrician and several other neighbors, and I don't know who all else, participated in some kind of a religious ceremonies, I guess you would call them, where my part in them, I remember them the focus was trying to get the evil out of me. So this was not about Satanism. This was all done in the name of God and in the name of goodness, and I was the bad one. Mm-hmm. And all my life, I could never, I just, they gave me that message loud and clear, and I bought it, I just bought it, and I knew that I was defective and that there was something wrong with me. So I got drunk all the time, and then I found drugs, so I did drugs all the time, and meanwhile my life happened, but, that was almost incidental, and I have I got married to a psychopath and had a baby, and it was horrible. And I just knew how bad I was from that. I was taught so well by my mommy and daddy and everyone else. So it's been, I repressed a whole lot of that, and as I got sober, I gave up alcohol, and then a few years later gave up drugs, and then a few years later quit binging and purging, and a few years later quit workaholism. As I let down my defenses, more and more things came up, and I get to deal with this stuff, and it makes me more of a human. I get to be like you now. I don't have this secret that I'm really terrible, and I can fake being okay, but that's all it is. And it's, I just learned that, and a lot of times I forget it, and I can call somebody up. I can just come over here, and you all don't believe that I'm making that up, So I get to at least, even if I can't believe it right then and there, I get to be with people who don't believe it, And I know, like, when I first started dealing with incest, I got it from here up. I got it intellectually, and it didn't really sift down into my emotional being until later. And when it did, everything exploded, and that's when I remembered. I won't say everything, because who knows about that, but I remembered a lot. And I had brain fade and just lost my point there, but I bet it was a good one.
Extremely intense one that you did.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to speak a little bit about, my name is Rosa.
Wait.
That's my immediate Thank you.
Something Jane just said really made me want to.
Could you say your name?
Oh, my name is Rosa Johnson, and I'm a counselor here. And initially, the need to deal with incest was brought to me because of my clients that I deal with. A lot of my clients, as we did more and more work with them, it kept coming up that they were survivors of incest, or that they had been involved in incest and they were trying to survive it. And in my quest to help my clients, it became evident that I was to also help myself. Because like Jane, for a long time I was able to intellectualize about, oh yes, I survived incest, but I never ever did any internal work around it, because I just never had a network of people to work with me. I never reached out to anybody about it, because I grew up thinking that I was one of the few people that had experienced this terrible incident. And so when I came to Glide as a counselor, here all of a sudden is a vehicle whereby I was able to talk about it. I think there was a meeting where we had upstairs, where I think that was the first time I ever said in public what had, I don't think I even actually said what actually happened, but that my stepfather, father, and several men in my life had incested me and raped me repeatedly, and that I had been carrying this stuff around. So through working through it here at Glide has helped me to become more clear about it, and therefore I'm able to help my clients more. The intellectualizing about it, I could talk about it, oh yes, I could tell you what happened, but what happened in the process of meeting in the groups, I had a dream one night where I confronted my mother about it, and when I woke up the next morning, I couldn't move. I couldn't move for 3 days. I was in pain for 3 days in my back and in my legs, and for even then I didn't want to accept that it was the memory that had caused this pain in my body. It just didn't make sense to me. But in talking to the women here, it helped me to realize that I'm coming out of the intellectualizing about it, and I'm actually dealing with the feelings. And that's kind of scary because, of course, I've been smothering the feelings and the memories for so long. It was my stepfather initially that incested me. He would do terrible things to me from the time I was 3 years old. And originally I thought it was until I was 7. It might have been longer because I'm just recently finding out that he was still alive when I was a teenager, and I thought he had died. And then later on in my life, it was my father who actually approached me. I think I was 23 years old, and my father came into the picture, I thought, as my rescuer, because I was at that time dealing with some very wild and reckless people, and all of a sudden here was Dad, and I thought, oh gee, really, here's my father, he will get these people off of me. But no, in fact, he too turned out to be part of the problem, part of the major part of the problem, sent me into serious therapy. And I suppressed it from 22 until now, and now I'm 49 years old, and I'm just now beginning to accept the fact that all of these things did happen to me, and I still got a life anyway. And I'm really, really thankful to be a part of this community here at Glide, because I know that I couldn't do this. I wouldn't dare try to do this outside of Glide. I wouldn't. I don't know anybody in my outside of Glide. I don't know anyone that I can even talk to this about, other than the women here. And it's amazing to me the amount of women that I have been incested. It is amazing. Every day I see new clients. I have a new client now, and her father, whom she loves dearly, incested her for years, and now she's dealing with the possibility of him doing it to her daughter, his granddaughter. So I'm seeing how, and she doesn't want to speak about it, so I'm seeing how, what's that called, intergenerational stuff? It goes on generation after generation. And I'm seeing how that is set in place and how it's kept in place. So I'm trying at this time to help this lady to realize that it can stop right now. It doesn't have to go on with her daughter and her daughter's daughter. It can stop. But I wouldn't have been able to even do this had it not been for my coming here and aligning myself with the community of women that's also surviving from these acts. I'm really, it does give me, it's an empowering feeling, but at the same time it's scary. It's real scary, even when I think about it. Because I had started doing some reading about it and doing some real good work, and then I dropped out. I stopped coming to the group. I stopped doing my reading because so much was coming up. It was just, had me shaky all the time. And, really questioning whether or not it really happened. I'm beginning to say, oh no, this really didn't happen. I must have dreamed it. But no, it did happen, and I'm really thankful to the Glide community to be a vehicle for me for this healing.
One of the things that happened for me was I was so shocked that, I'm in Thailand. And I was staffing with the women's services. One of the things that was so shocked me was that we were talking about it in church, because I grew up in the church, and you never talked about anything sexual in a church. And talking about it here was like, I was just amazed. It was like they're really talking about incest, that word. And, but I was excited about it, because I dealt with some of my incest issues before, but always in very isolated kind of things. Me and a therapist, me and one friend, but never with a group of people.
Were you incested by?
I was incested by my father. And like sexually handled by his friends. So that's incest too. I mean, sometimes I get really crazy about what was incest. Is incest only when it's penetration? Is incest when somebody fondles you? I mean, and it's all incest because I accepted those people as my family. My father's friends were my uncles. So it was incest. But I just couldn't, I couldn't say it to people who knew me before, and it's like now there's a whole group of people that I know I can talk to and say I'm having memories, You get ready to say you're having memories of somebody about flashbacks about incest and people just go blank. It's like, thank you very much.
I think I hear the phone ringing.
Or else they say, what? You say the word incest and they like they didn't hear it, And of course, I start shutting up because it's like, well, I don't really want to say it either, so let's both go into denial. I was talking about the laundry, Oh, God. But, I get to say it here, and I can get to say it like it's just part of my life. But I can call Jane and say, I'm having memories, and Jane's not going to go, oh, poor thing. It's like, okay. And because of that, I get to have a life. I don't have to have incest rule my entire life, that whole secret. I can have it, I can know it happened, but it doesn't have to define me, I mean, I'm glad that we're together as a group, and that's important because now I know people beyond what their story is, like, oh, somebody's mother, somebody's father. I mean, I know, that we share a common pain, but there's so much more, and I have a life, instead of a secret, that's...
Somebody said to me, and it was a male person, and he said, but it's so much easier for you to identify what you have to overcome because you had such a horrible thing happen to you. I mean, it's much harder for me who didn't have that horrible thing happen to me to define why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And in some ways, I have to agree with that brother because truly, I believe that incest, assault, violation, the kind of raping of your power as a child, because you are most vulnerable when you are a child, is the worst kind of experience. On the other hand, if you can come through it, if you can walk with it, and we're talking about that pain, that awful thing, whatever, mush, your brain turns to mush, your body turns to mush, you become nothing but a shell, whatever happens, that you can walk, if you can walk with that pain, that somehow continue walking with it and asking for the help and the support, that you can come to some other place. And that I'm not saying that that's a better place, it's a clearer, I'm not saying what place it is, but for me, it really has helped me to understand power and powerlessness better, I think. Because I've been able to identify what it is that is the horror and what it is the powerlessness is about. And to say, okay, that doesn't, like you say, define me. I have to choose to use that and walk with it and redefine it, reshape it, and reshape me. And make me over. Make me over. But I couldn't do that if I didn't have you to help me, to walk with me. I don't think it's possible to do it yourself. Just don't.
Well, I don't think I would have gotten to the place I am now with my incest in this short amount of time without this group.
No, we challenge each other to. We challenge each other to survive. We challenge each other to be strong. Don't you think?
Yes,
Yeah, see,
We challenge each other.
this is the group for me. I've been in recovery from drugs. Okay, Michael, I went through the recovery program here at Glide. I've worked here 8 years. I'm Edna Watts, okay? And I thought for me, I wasn't incested by a relative. It was my father's boss. From the time I was 11 years old, I became his housekeeper, through the time I was 15 years old and got out of the house, got married to get away from the house. And I confessed this to a priest at 13, and he raped me because he said he wanted me to understand that although he was a priest, he was a man first. So for me, it was like I went into the drugs, into the alcohol. I went through 2 marriages, being totally beat up and raped by a whole lot of men since that point. But to me, rape was simply allowing it to happen because why not? I mean, if he gonna take it, he gonna take it. What difference make whether I give it to him, whether he take it? So go and take it. Just get it over with, But when I got into recovery from drugs, I had often spoke of being sexually and mentally and physically abused. And I had spoke of that even in the sanctuary. And I had thought and hoped that this would bring me some freedom from it. But I still could never find no space. So I went into the recovery from drugs, from alcohol. Of course, this was one of my main issues. The fact that I had spent a life of darkness. I had spent a total childhood of being raped 4 times a week by a man that my daddy worked for, but provided my brothers, my sisters, my mom, provided our livelihood. And I always felt like I was keeping the family. I was doing what I had to do. So I thought I learned to do what I had to do at an early age, and that was good because all through life I had to do what I had to do, regardless of what it was I had to do and how ugly and dirty it was. But in recovery from drugs and alcohol, I was going through that and I stopped using. I stopped getting high. Totally stopped getting high. Believed in recovery, but I still wasn't finding that space on the inside of me I needed. And I would hear other women and men speak generally at times of abuse, but mainly we were concerned with recovery from addiction of drugs. Okay? But it wasn't until I could be in a room with nothing but people who had absolutely the major thing of sexual, physical, mental abuse in common, that I could begin to feel and to let go, to understand, to reshape, I started then being able to accept the fact that this was as much a part and an evil part of me as addiction to drugs was. But I had to separate one recovery from the other because I couldn't put them together. I just could not. I could not. Not to get high did not stop the dreams. It didn't stop the memories. It didn't stop the pain. I just went into that recovery and going with that recovery saying, well, no matter how bad it gets, I still cannot use anything. But I was still, I was still in prison. I still had no freedom. I still had no freedom. I still had to suffer with that. That was the problem prior to the addiction to drugs.
And and the freedom comes from the sharing of the stories too.
Yes.
That's the beginning of the freedom, and it happens when you share, you're able to share with someone else.
Yes.
And I'm finding that out.
So in the time that we've had this going, I've been able to not dream so much. To not think I'm so different. Not think I'm just so full of something that nobody else could possibly understand. It's something about not being alone, or maybe being somewhere where you absolutely got a right to talk about it. Without spectators, without, that to me is so positive until I'm finding the space I needed to simply live, to breathe, to breathe.
To me, it's like free from, my name is Jane Jackson, and to me it's like being freed from slavery, because I'm a survivor of incest from my step-grandfather, and being brought up in a very strict religious family my mother confided in the minister at our church, only to hear that back again the following week from the girls in school, because the minister was having an affair with one of my schoolmates' mother. It was okay for them to trash me as the little 12-year-old slut and tramp that was having her grandmother's husband, but nobody said anything about the minister sleeping around the church, or the deacons when the women would get happy in church on Sunday. Instead of them carrying them out, they were feeling them under their dresses and things like this. And I guess we were supposed to, as black children in the traditional black setting of church, supposed to act like we were blind and couldn't see these things going on, or to go to the beauty parlor on Saturdays and hear people talk about who's sleeping with who. But when a child cries out for help, there's nobody there. My mother branded, as that woman that's taking care of those wayward children, because she stuck by me for what happened in my life. And to feel the guilt feeling that I might have possibly caused my mother's death because she had a heart attack when the doctor told her that I was pregnant when they took me to the hospital and they found out what was wrong. And it was things like this that made me turn against church. When I first walked into this church back in the 70s, I was drunk off of alcohol. My alcohol choice was vodka 101. My drug choice was pure cocaine. I didn't want street cocaine. I only had to associate with people that dealt uncut cocaine. So I stayed high all the time, and this was an excuse to get away. I was a prisoner within my own body. And I walked up in here and I saw all kinds of people in church, all colors, and I looked around and I said, this is not even real. I am too loaded. And I left. Then we started coming back to church here. Every once in a while we would come like on holidays. And I said, I can't be that high every time I come to this church because these people are so loving. They walk up to you and they hug you and they don't even know you. Or they see you on the street and say something to you. And I said, there's something about that church. So I stumbled back in here one morning and Cecil said, welcome home. And I said, this man hasn't seen me in years. How does he remember who I am? Then I started coming every Sunday. And then when I heard Jan do her speech, I said, wow. This is a woman who I had read some of her poetry, and I admired her. I had her like on a pedestal. I said, now if it happened to her, and she can stand in front of all these people and tell them and cry, what do I have to be ashamed of? She's a minister's wife. And there went that connection back to my childhood, the minister and what he was doing in the church. But here was a minister who was telling everybody, it's okay to feel hurt, because you're safe here. And here was a minister's wife that was saying, I've been through what you've been through. I know how it feels. So these were two people in my life that brought me out of a shell, and I was no longer a prisoner within my own self. And it enabled me to go back within my own family setting. And the older people in the family that I felt turned their back on me when I was a child and I needed them, I was able to look at them and say, I don't need you anymore. The one thing that I wanted to do was to be able to love people because I wanted to love them, not because I felt like I had to. And I was no longer stereotyped by name calling or having an old maid aunt tell her boyfriend that I don't want you sitting by her because, she's got a reputation. When men were not my preference in the first place. And to have a man sit on a witness stand and tell a judge that the reason why he raped me as a 12-year-old child was because I was too masculine. And he was trying to make me be a woman. This was supposed to make it all right. So here at Glide, it not only saved my life, it encouraged me to stop destroying myself and start doing constructive things for other people and start trying to help other people. And it was through talking with Jan about my problem and what had happened to me after listening to her that enabled me to put my arms around other people and embrace them and tell them, come on out, you don't have to stay in the closet anymore. So here at Glide, we provide a safe setting for people to do the things that we're doing. And the one thing that I tell everybody, there needs to be more ministers and more ministers' wives like Jan and Cecil, who encourage people to deal with your own issues. Then you can live your life comfortably. And thanks to them, they've inspired me to go on and not only live my own life and be comfortable. I'm an AIDS counselor. I'm involved in the Stevens ministry, and I'm doing all these things because I want to do them, and I don't have to feel ashamed to do them anymore. I don't have to feel like I'm that no good little tramp that grew up in San Francisco to be nothing and I was born and raised in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. I was born and raised in the city of human people. And here at Glide is what I find in a church setting, is a bunch of human people and not people that are always throwing rocks at glass houses.
I think the thing for me, when I first came, my name is Terry Garner. I started coming to Glide, I guess it's about 2.5 years ago, and I had just gotten out of the hospital for alcohol-related situation, but also that came up when I was in the hospital was around my incest from my father. And I came to Glide because I was spiritually lost, and I put down the alcohol that I had used for many years to try to find the truth in myself, and it sort of made a disaster of my thinking of my life. And so I came here, and because I needed a spiritual place to go, I needed a home, I needed to find out. I've gone back, since I've been dealing with my incest and in recovery, I've gone back and looked at my journals and things, and a lot of times in my journals I would always write, I'm up against the wall, I'm up against the wall. It was always about hitting my head against a wall. And it's only recently that I realized that wall was very connected to the incest that I had as a child, and holding on to this secret. And I can really identify with what Edna and Tombi were saying about the secret. Letting go of the secret has been the most healing thing for me in terms of my incest, and the fact that I'm doing it publicly, and I couldn't have done that without Glide. That's not something I would have done on my own, and it took being a part of this community to do that. When I stood up in front of 300 people, as Jane was saying, and said things that I'd hardly said to myself, that there was a moment where you're whole, where you're complete again, that you hadn't been before. And I don't know how to describe it. And it's a process that's happening now for me. And it's like before I was a part. Because, like you were saying, I had to hold on to the secret. I had to take care of the family. I had to do this. Suddenly, I could not be a human being. I had to be this other person. Or it wasn't even a person. It was this sort of being who was going to control and hold on to the secret. And if I held on hard enough, then everything would be all right. And I did that for years and years until, I found myself, hospitalized, and I found that I couldn't hold on, and my life was in shambles, and I came here. And when people stood up and started talking about this in the church, it was a tremendous relief to me. It was like saying, oh, I'm a human being, and this happens to other people. This happens to other people, and this is what's been going on. And it's made, it's hard to tell. We've talked about it in the group and the support of the group, the identification that we get with each other just on, when we're here on Sunday or when we're here with other times, involved in other functions at the church. It's a comfort. I remember Mariah talking that when she's in the choir, she sends out this kind of love to people, and that's like, that is such a gift that I've been given, and it's because I've been willing to lay down the secret, to not be silent anymore, and that's just a leap. It's like, it's sort of like, Jane and I were talking, it's like, I'll just show up here lots of times, and it's like, I'm not going to be on video, that's not what's going to happen tonight, and I'm not going to say my name, it's like, I'm not going to get up and read in front of, I just show up and think, oh, I'm just going to show up, and by doing that, and by me just showing up, it's like things happen, because the community is here, and the support is here, that is very real. It's very, very real, and I hadn't found that before I came here. I hadn't found that at all, and I'm very grateful. I'm extremely grateful. My life is not perfect by any means at this point, but I don't wake up with the kind of despair that I used to wake up with, and not understand why, and now, things come up, and, and I say, oh, okay, but I'm here, and I am, like you were saying, I'm living my life now, it's not like I'm over here, and here's my life over here, and I'm watching it, and, oh, let's move this person over here, and let's move myself, it's like, I'm in it, I'm in it, and I could never have until I broke that silence,
You mentioned spirituality, which is another, I think, element that exists here that is different and essential.
Yes.
And I think that's, and it's because it's a church, but it's also because it's a family. And I think that, I would like to hear maybe, of course, continue to talk about what you're going to talk about, but I want to raise that question with you about spirituality and how important that is to this program, because I think that this is where I have rediscovered my spirituality, and it was in the revealing, it was in the hearing, it was in the seeing of myself and you that I realized what spirituality really is. And that is in seeing myself in you, and knowing that I'm not alone. And I think it's that secret, the isolation, the sense of no one else is as bad as I am, no one else has been through what I've been through, that makes you, that scrapes you out, that makes you totally devoid of feeling a relationship to God, a relationship to anything greater than yourself. So that regaining spirituality for me has been just such a struggle and such a journey. And I battle with receiving God each day. And I don't know what that's about. So I guess I'll figure that out. I guess you all will help me figure that out.
But spirituality here in Glide is reality. You see, because spirituality here in Glide, we all become spiritual here in Glide because I don't have to look like y'all, and on Sunday I don't have to dress like the next person. We are not a congregation of lookalikes. And on top of that, regardless of who's sitting by me, I accept that person as that person, not who I wish they were, or who I think they are, or anything. Each one of us becomes an individual in Glide, but we're all collectively together. And that spirit of truth and faith, and how can you have spirit if you don't have no reality with it? Reality is spiritual, and that's what God real.
That's right.
So then therefore it cannot help but be spiritual.
Yes.
And that's where the spirit in God remains and comes from.
The last place I expected to see any spirituality would be in a church. The very last place I thought it would show up. People just talk about God and then do what the hell they want to do, And I come here and I find it everywhere, just everywhere. And it's in the walking, it's in the talking, it's in the being. We do it, we don't just talk it. It's tangible here.
Yes.
And it makes me so happy.
And it doesn't just come from the pulpit.
Right, yeah, right, exactly.
I think though, here at Glide, in our spirituality, we get empowerment from our minister.
Yes.
And we have a minister here that leads this church who empowers everybody in the church, and you don't have to do as he says that you should do. He tells you and advises you, and the choice is yours. And here we are encouraged to be like Jesus like. Jesus walked around with everybody. He associated with the winos, the prostitutes, and everybody else. This is what we do here at Glide. So in the traditional church type setting, we're living in a fantasy world. That's why a lot of us have come here and wondered, well, why is it that this song is making me cry? It's coming from the inside, that spirit. And I've been in church all my life. I have never cried in church as much as I've cried here. You know, and there are certain songs that they sing now that I've listened to all my life. Just a closer walk to thee never meant a thing to me. Till this Sunday. And then the way I was brought up, nobody but black people sang gospel songs. And here is Just a Closer Walk to thee with an Oriental girl singing. I said, well, whichever. You know, they moderate. Everything is going modern now. But when I saw that, I said, this is against everything I was taught in church. You know, we were taught there was only James Cleveland and Mahalia Jackson and Shirley Caesar. Now you go around and I look at our choir. The feeling that comes out of our choir, if that ain't spiritual, because we got every country in the world represented in our choir, in our church, and everything blends together. And then we go out, and we're all ministers in our own right. We all minister to each other. That's what's spiritual about Glide.
I think something needs to be said about Cecil Williams, who does indeed reveal himself, too. I mean, I think that's quite different. You don't see a minister who's willing to reveal himself.
That's why I'll believe him.
Right.
Because he's a human, and he admits it right out there in front of everybody.
And it really doesn't matter with him whether you like him or not, or whether you put into the donation or not. Things don't like that. No. He lets us know, hey, yo, I'm an individual, I'm a man, I'm me, and this is what I feel, this is what I think. And he gives us choice as to whether. But then it makes sense when he says it. That's the minister part of him. That's the spiritual part of him, which comes out in that part.
And encouraging each one of us to be authentic, to be true to ourselves, to be the very best of who we are. Not who you are, who I am I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be a good Ntombe. I'm supposed to be a good Jane Fox. And it's the most wonderful message. And I never thought I'd hear it in church.
The spirituality gave me a connection back to myself, because I had so many things in the way. I had my incest and being an alcoholic and being a drug addict. All these things were just reasons I couldn't be spiritual, because spiritual was being part of God and goodness and wonderfulness, and I obviously wasn't that. I mean, I was obviously not that. And here it was like, yes, I get to have all those parts of me, and that's part of me being spiritual. I mean, it was like a wholeness. It was like all of me could be what is called spiritual, and also being with people, because my spirituality was like me and God. The rest of you were like, well, you were necessity to have around, but spirituality was really me and the Holy Spirit. Now it's like spirituality is how I am with you, and how I am with myself, and how I am with everybody, and that's, it's like living it. It's like being it, and not having to hide any part. I don't feel like I have to apologize for God, like, oh God, I apologize for this, and this, and can you possibly still love me? That's a given now. I mean, and around here, I got that as a given. I'm just loved for who I am, and people know all the things that I've done wrong. I mean, they know all my secrets, I mean, I told some secrets in the last week that were, it was incredibly painful, and nobody changed. Nobody said, ooh, you know, who are you? And it's like that's spirituality, you know, that's spirit.
I think when we're growing up, our families are our reality, and that reality is so skewed and distorted by the incest because it's such a huge secret. My name's Mariah, and I grew up with this secret that was so huge that eventually I totally shut down so that I wasn't real at all anymore. When you're talking about tears, I mean, crying's real. All humans cry. And we all cry here in the church, and I cried for 6 months solid when I came here. And I never cried in my house. And I was being molested by my father. And I never cried there because I couldn't cry. I couldn't reveal anything because I couldn't reveal the primary reality of what was going on with me. Because sexuality is so primary and primal that when that is being stolen from us by our perpetrators, we have the most primary trauma going on that I think anybody can have. Before I came to Glide, my life was really sectioned off. I'm an attorney, and I became an attorney to work on social justice issues, and I worked a lot with men. And then I started to remember my incest, and my incest I did in rooms with women. And therapy groups and anonymous groups, although, you know, I owe a lot to anonymous groups, are not reality. They're something you do off in a room by yourselves. And when this group started, I kept saying over and over again, this is real. I sing in the choir here. I see all of you once or twice a week. This is the reality of my life. I have like a part-time volunteer job here, and the people that I work with are here talking with me about their incest. And I knew as we started it that that would be the most powerful healing I'd ever happen because it was real, and Glide to me is real. And women talking off in rooms by themselves, I mean, we talk by ourselves and then we bring it back to the congregation. But when Cecil opened up for all of us to share, I stood up in front of the congregation, and I'm pretty comfortable with public speaking, and I shook from my little toe to the last hair on my head. I have never been so scared. And one of the men from the choir, Roosevelt, came up and just sat quietly in the pew ahead of me. And I knew he was there so that if I fell, he would catch me. And I'll never, ever forget him for that. And that was the first man who had ever encountered personally my incest. And it was such a wonderful way for me to break out of that isolation with women. And that's the kind of healing we're talking about, where we get to feel human again, because we are part of the larger community, and we can bring, and churches are real. You know, families are real. My family was real, and it wasn't real. And my church was real, and it wasn't real, because my father was extremely esteemed and a very religious man. This church is real, and it's real, and it's real. It's real all the way through all the levels. And that's, I think, why the healing is so powerful. And the healing I've done on my incest in this group is absolutely the most powerful, because it's not segmented. I get to incorporate, I get to talk to all of these really intelligent women about what the political impact is. And I get to hear stories from women from other aspects of the culture or other races. And that to me breaks down all the confusion and the stereotypes we have on this issue. So then the political reality of incest becomes more and more clear, and that's still a process that's happening to me. But somehow my politics and my personal spirituality really are coming together, that I see that, I mean, these families where incest happens really are like training grounds for the most negative parts of our culture. And all of us who break out of that and say we're not going to be a part of that family system, we're not going to continue to perpetuate those patterns in our relationships, in our lives, with our children, with our lovers, with our friends, we are breaking that pattern and we are changing the world. And I feel that with every fiber of my being, and that's what I think is so powerful. And the women that I found at Glide also are women who aren't afraid to go out, and Janice, I've told her many times, pushes me out. And I think, as other people have said, the more if we reveal ourselves to 100 people, the healing is 100-fold. I really think that's true. So it's just, and the more we reveal ourselves also, the more we see. When we did the cultural night and invited other women, and I looked at those thousands, I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration, but at least... Yeah, 1,000 eyes. But a church full of women, and they were weeping, and they were laughing, and they were in there, and somehow they had been touched by incest too. So not only am I healing myself by sharing with them, but just looking at them lets me know it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me and those 5 other women in my first therapy group. It's me and thousands and thousands and thousands of women. And what is this huge social problem that we all are dealing with? And that is so personally fulfilling to me, to combine that, to be able to use my head and my heart and my spirituality all together in dealing with this.
But you're also doing this, you're also breaking the cycle for your children.
Yes.
Because I look at you and your children, Mariah, and your children are so incredible, and they're so bright, and they're so... And you were talking about intergenerational, and you were talking about grandfathers. I mean, this is... I think there is a pattern that we fulfill. There is a cycle that we fulfill, and we're breaking in that, and that is quite historical. That is quite historical, and I think that is... It's the most significant, powerful thing that we can do.
It can keep me going when I just don't.
From work, and she came in at night, and she felt like, she said, Mom, you're not going to smoke some other time tonight. Started off a kind of okay conversation until we kept talking, and I asked the question, Lisa, if you got raped before you made it home, what would you do? Would you come through the door, and would you tell me? And think about it. Would you honestly? If you get away unharmed, other than your body, totally being taken and destroyed, okay, but you didn't die, and possibly not even bruised a lot. You walk through the door. Would you come in and immediately say, I was raped? And this has been about 6 months ago. And for me, she turned around, she said, well, Mama, out of all the talking you do, if you got raped, because where we live is in Fillmore, it's on the dark side, and it is dangerous between the bus stop and our apartment. And she said, if you got raped right there on that dark parking lot behind the apartment, and then you come on in the house, would you tell me? And all of a sudden, there was silence. Now, she's 24 years old, and I'm 46. And we deal all the time with reality and honesty and what's happened to me in my life. And I've tried to help her not to have to be a victim to men like that, okay? But this one question, would we tell? Since that time, we've been able to talk through it, and now we're at the point, yeah, we're going to tell. But you see, it helped me to get to the point here where, and I've said this before, that would be the only power. The Anita Hill thing also helped. That would be the only power I have, or she would have, or any of us would have, is to immediately afterwards, if I had breath left, let me tell. Let me scream it. Let me just get in your face. I've just been raped. I've been raped. I've been raped. I've been raped. I don't care what boom, I've been raped. So now, that's not a scary issue. Because even after that conversation that night in my bed, that was scary. That was scary. As much as I thought her and I could talk, had I ever thought about, because she does love me, because I do love her, would we really tell each other? But yeah, we can now. But then I can't hear now. Would I been able to come to work and say to Jan, or to Jane, or to anybody, I was raped last night. Maybe I'd have come to work and thought it just better, it happened, it's over, and let it go. And then I'd have just died inside over and over and over again. And I'd have drifted away from the eyes of my sisters here, and they'd have been going, what's wrong, Edna? But I would have been still hiding inside. You turn inward. And I'm so glad that I've dealt with that. And I know if I couldn't scream while it was being done, I'm going to shout real loud. Thereafter. Yeah. For me and my family, a miraculous thing has happened the night of the cultural night that we had the cultural night. I have been trying to work out within myself how to confront my mother about my anger. My mother's a very loving, spiritual woman in the community, and everybody loves Sister Omi. And nobody understood, they didn't even guess at the separateness between me and my mother. But I knew it was there, and I was very aware as to why it was there. And my mother didn't know. And I was able to tell her once I started coming to this group, Mother, I'm working through incest, and I'm very angry with you. And so I'm going to be away from you for a while. I won't be hanging out with you much. I won't call you much. And that's all I could say. And then we had the cultural night, and my mother came. I had invited her, but she said she couldn't make it. And she came, and I didn't know she was here until afterwards. And afterwards, it was miraculous. This lady came to me and said that she had no idea that I had been carrying around that much pain all those years. She had no idea that I felt that she had contributed to it. And she offered herself as a vehicle for my healing. And that night was the first time I was able to look my mother in the eye and say, okay, Mother, then I'm thankful that you're there for me. And yes, you can help me in many ways, and we can get through this together. But what was so wonderful is that the vehicle for that healing, that bridging, happened right here at Glide. It happened here. And a lot of times I question myself as to why I'm here. I really do. And then I look at these different aspects of my life that's coming together, that's being healed. And I know why God sent me here, because it's straight God's business here. I mean, it's not me. I tell my clients all the time, it is God's will that Rosa came here, because Rosa would have been in Egypt somewhere, braiding hair on the Nile or something. But because of the vehicle of this church and this group and this oneness that's practiced here, a healing is taking place between me and my mother. And that's important to me, because I'm my mother's only daughter, and she is my only mother. And I really don't want my mother to pass and us have this separateness and this dreadful secret and this dislike and this distrust and her not knowing. And it's miraculous now, because she understands why I was a teenage runaway, why I was an alcoholic at 14, why I was so promiscuous. It's because of all that incest stuff that I was carrying around. So that cultural night affected a healing for me, for us, and my mother, and all the women in that group. It was such a wonderful thing. And it is still a wonderful thing to be a part of a group like this. It's just incredibly good for me.
I don't know, I was here and I listen to everybody, and it makes me feel really good. But I'm thinking about Sunday. I'm Joyce, and I'm what's there, and I very seldom get a chance to listen to all the celebrations. But I'm thinking about the sermon this Sunday, Cecil's sermon this Sunday, and I'm thinking about a book, No Hiding Place. And Cecil talked about the rock and going to the rock and no hiding place. And I think that that's what Glide is for me, is not having to hide, behind, first behind other people's agendas, and then having to hide behind my false agendas that I set up for myself. I think that it makes you reveal. Makes you reveal what you are and where you should be. And that stuck with me all this week about no hiding place. And I think that I've spent most of my life as an abused child, as a child who spent a lot of time being by herself and being lonely, and the way we hug and kiss here, and never having that from my family, because they weren't that type of family, and never having that type of an acceptance from my family, except for only seeing the abusive part, and spending a lot of time alone and in closets and in various other places that said that you weren't important.
that you spend a lot of time hiding and hiding from yourself. And my relationship with Glide is to come out from behind those different hiding places and revealing. Sometimes it's painful to reveal that you're sexist, that you're racist, that you are whatever the title that society gives us, but that you live up to that title, you know, and it's very difficult to reveal that. But but with Cecil and Glide, and I think, you know, Jan, especially, I know she's broken down a lot of barriers for me as far as saying that you don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to be what other people expect you to be, or mainly for me, what you expect you should be in order to be accepted. And I think that people who have suffered any kinds of abuse need to know that they don't have to hide anymore. And this is what Glide does for us, is to break down those barriers and those hiding places. And what we constantly try to do for our children.
And you know, when you think about the fact that shame is such a part of incest, and the fact that we're not ashamed now is miraculous. I mean, because I know when I was a kid and being incest, I was so ashamed. I felt like there was something I had done wrong, you know, and somehow I deserved to be treated like this. And it was shameful. And it was shameful to think you could tell somebody that your parents treated you like that and that my mother wouldn't protect me. I mean, it was like, what's wrong with me if my mother wouldn't protect me? You know? And so it was so shameful. I mean, I knew that I had to have something terribly wrong with me, just basically wrong, you know, and coming here, you know, it was like, I got to see there's nothing wrong with me. And sometimes I still ask myself that question, you know, something happens and it's like, is something wrong with me? And it's like, it's so important that people tell me there's nothing wrong with me, that I really am okay and I'm really valuable, I'm really worthy, you know. And it's like, you talked about rape, you know, incest and rape are only two crimes I know where the people who are the victims feel shame. You get robbed, people don't run around and go, oh, I'm so ashamed of being robbed. They say, I've been robbed. You know, you incested or you raped, and all of a sudden the women go, oh, maybe I did something wrong. You know, that's so crazy. And it's because it's women. I really believe it's because it was women. It was against men that it would be different. And so it's, you know, it's important to me that I have this group. It's important to me that I have Glide. It's important to me that I have some place where I can know that I am a good person and I'm worthwhile, you know, because for so long I didn't believe it. And so I got into drugs and I got into alcohol and I got into screwed up relationships and situations that were dangerous and just, you know, tried to kill myself bit by bit. So it's important, you know, there's no shame in being an incest survivor. I am now not ashamed because it was not my fault. I didn't cause it, I didn't do it, and there was nothing I could have done to stop it.
That's cool.
I wanted to say something.
Who are you?
My name is Sabrina Taylor, and I've been feeling that unworthiness. But I mean, I always felt that my word didn't mean anything. You know, what I had to say didn't mean anything. And since I've been coming to the groups, I've been able to recollect some of the incest and abuse that I've gone through. As a child, I never really had anyone to talk to about it. I'm 35 years old now, and I came to California in 1986, and that's when I started to get help. And it wasn't until 1989 that I had come to Glide before, but it wasn't until 1989 that I had seen a flyer that was put out on the book that Jan is working on. And it was at that time that I started to open up more and start dealing with the issues that I had around incest. And in my case, like a lot of women, it was male relatives that had incested me. And I don't have all the memories, like I said, but and sometimes I feel that people also outside of the family had also done some things to me. But I feel very thankful that that this group has been here and the women have been here to work on it with me, because I feel like I couldn't have done it alone. And I'm finding out that it's like something I'm going to always have to deal with. And Jan was mentioning about the spirituality. When I came in '89 to Glide and started to really deal with the issues, I was unemployed and in between jobs, and at that time it was like I was dying. Emotionally and spiritually, I was dying. It wasn't only until a few days ago that I started to see that's what was happening to me. And the isolation has been very hard. That has been very hard. It's like I said, as a child, there was no one there for me. And I'm very thankful for Cecil and Glide, and for Glide and for Jan. I mean, it's not just like I'm starting to accept my creative talents more and wanting to do something with it. And that's a very beautiful feeling. And I also have a sister that was also, she was also raped, and by her being raped, that helped me to deal with my issues, because I wasn't dealing with it. It was only until it had happened to her. And I want to say that the person that had raped her was my uncle. And when I was a child, he was on heroin. And it's like, it's still hard, for me to say, like he raped me. It's still hard for me to say that. And I bring out the thing about my sister because with the cultural event, my sister was also able to take part in that. And I feel very thankful.
Giant steps.
Thank you, Jane.
That art exhibit was so beautiful, and your work was such an important central point of that, for many of us. There's a very loud voice speaking to the art, and through your words. We're going to do that again, the art exhibit. So I hope we need all of your help to get the word out on this by the end of this month. So really, not, it will be open to everybody, not just the SAIV group, not just incest surviving is not just the sole topic, but I think it will be quite a significant part of it.
Yeah.
So, Allison, how you doing?
To describe the feeling and the magnitude. You not only get it in the women's group at Glide, you get it from their Bible study and being in ministry. We're able to connect outside of the group together and feel safe. And we could touch each other and realize real love. The spiritual side of my life is blossoming like the unfolding of a beautiful rose on a birth, of fragrance and color and beauty. I'm at home with Glide. If I could have a cot here, I would have it here. I did have to.
The girls' dorm.
Yes. You don't know. You were not here when we sheltered the homeless.
Oh.
That was like a real zoo. Thank you.
And go home. One
Did
sort of party
you want to stay
freedom
with,
home.
didn't you want us to stay with you and attend kids?
Enough.
No. Speak for yourself, Toby.
I think what's being done here at Glide should be shared with every part of the world. I hope that whatever we can do to bring that blossom out to each and every part of the country, to have women listen to each and every one of us, and there's something in each of us that's going to touch them in their hearts to bring them out, to want to get them together, maybe a coffee clutch, and open up as we have. And hopefully this tape reaches everyone.
Thanks, Glo. That was a great ending for a commercial. I do think we need to say something about at the beginning of the whole group, when we had our first session, the explosive part of the group was talking about cultural diversity, cultural specificity, cultural differences, etc. And I do think that it's extremely important to say it, because I think in America, people have all of these walls. I mean, society has all these walls, and it's not nice to talk about it, except if you live in the South and you're black or Asian, and then, you know for sure that you can't go to that toilet, or, And I think when you live in a city like San Francisco, and it is liberal, and you do not expect issues like racism and diversity to emerge and to be confronted head on, that it's very important for us to say there are real differences, that what happens in this society, in this community, and what makes Glide so unique, is that poor people, rich people, middle-class people, whites, blacks, Asians, Hispanics, Native Americans can come together, men, women, gays, lesbians, can all come together, all ages, and be who they are, and be stronger, because we're able to say, yes, I am who I am, as you were saying. And when we talked about the necessity for culturally specific programs, not only in this group, but in all of our groups, in all of our recovery groups and so forth, we're very conscious of the cultural representation, of the ethnic representation in our groups. And I think it would be helpful for the purpose of this tape, to say why we have culturally specific components, for example, to our recovery program. Why I feel it is important for us to have a culturally specific component to the incest recovery group is because there are many parts of me that have felt powerless. The incest is one reason why I feel powerless. Another reason why I feel powerless is because I'm an Asian woman, and because I am perceived as Asian, because my family my family was put in concentration camps because of our ethnicity. And I believe in our experience that children who are of color are discriminated against in the school systems. That is going to create a different perception of themselves. It is going to impact on self-esteem. It is going to make you feel less than. It is going to cause you to respond and internalize the act or the perpetration of an inhumane rape of one's soul in a different manner, or in a manner that is the same, but I think internalized differently, perhaps, or responded to differently. Because I think that women of color are not heard naturally. I mean, you know, we talked about having, going to ISA meetings, and that is not to put down ISA, but to see an ISA meeting would be predominantly a white group of women. That is, I think, another issue of women of color feeling that they do not have here another opportunity of access, or another place where they can enact their power, or that message covertly is made that you are different and not a part of the total body.
I know it was important for me to, for us to have a culturally specific group, a women of color group, because I know when I went to therapists or I went to groups like ISA, I always edited. You know, I took out whole big chunks of stuff that I didn't say because I didn't want to further that stereotype of black people being, you know, bad and miserable in the ghetto, and I didn't want that. And I knew I would be judged that way, so I would edit whole areas out because I didn't want it to seem that bad, because I didn't want it to reflect on who I was as a black person and what I thought they'd think of me. So that I never in a therapy session ever said, I was talking to you one time and we said something about walking the wall. I never told therapists that I spent hours and hours with anything about that. Being slammed up against the wall, I would be very vague. Very, very kind of, you know, cleaning up as I went. And of course, so I wasn't telling them the whole truth. You know, and in the women of color group, I got to do that without knowing that, you know, none of the sisters there was going to judge me, my family, my culture, you know, my whole
Or the entire
thing.
race of black men. That's,
behind that,
yeah.
you know. And they would understand. They would understand when I talked about certain feelings about church and about God and about that whole thing that, you know, women teach each other. They'd understand, and I didn't have to interpret everything over. And you know, it was just a basic understanding.
Or something as basic as hair. Having good hair, light skin. I mean, I don't know what you all went through, but I mean, I went through half my life bleaching my skin. Putting Scotch tape on my eyelids. I told you about that. How'd you do that? And making, you know, just being very unhappy that you're not meeting up to the standards that you see on Vogue magazine or Harper's Bazaar or whatever. I mean, it really was an issue of self-esteem or lack of self-esteem. And for us too, in the Asian community, that it was not okay to say publicly in front of white people that the men in my family slapped me around, or that my grandmother had to pull slivers out of my back because of the kind of battering that happened. I mean, it wasn't acceptable. It was not okay.
Yes, I feel that when you're speaking of men, I have been in both types of groups where I've been the only African-American person there, and then I think why I feel that it's necessary to have a culture is because when I talk about the men in my family who were abusive, and it's always difficult for me to say abusive and say fairly, but abusive. But then if I say that, you know, I'm saying it, I'm just from the heart is what I mean. But then if I'm in a group where I have to subtly say, well, you know, that's a black male I'm speaking of, and how are they perceiving that? Black men aren't all abusive. I have to really qualify.
Yeah.
And then if somebody says something about a black man, then I'm getting ready to get up and fight, you know, because there is that fine line, that the cultural, the racial line that has to be, that can't be crossed for me, but where I can speak to a sister or whatever, and or not a black sister, African American sister, about that same thing, I would not feel comfortable about speaking. So my men would know.
I think we always, whenever we're oppressed, we live a kind of double life anyway.
Yeah.
And so there is a whole part of us that we don't show to the outer world.
Exactly.
And it was important to me here that I be able, in the women of culture, be able to just let it all hang out. Just let it let it be, and not have to have that facade that I hit the world with. And what's happened out of that is that now in the general group I open up much more, but I needed that base first. I needed that base to happen in the beginning, to be able to, because it's so painful to explore it and have to edit at the same time. I just would have shut down and shut up.
Yeah, I've heard someone say, we were talking, and they said, well, abuse is abusive, the man is abusive, he's abusive, and why are you hiding? I heard myself one time say in a group, but your man didn't have to go out and have to fight for a job. He did not have to go out and be put in a segregated situation where he couldn't take care of his family. And there is a difference there, not that you give excuses, but then there is the difference.
But it's the reality.
And it's the reality.
It's the reality. And it is the reality that the children in the Tenderloin who live in this area do have conditions that are much more life-threatening. They are much more vulnerable. Being homeless is like no other experience, and that's a reality of poverty. And most of these kids are Southeast Asian or black, and that is the reality. And there are white kids, of course, who live here, and that's not making a generalization, but it is. I mean, there are very strong class reasons for the acting out, the lack of self-esteem, the perpetuation of the powerlessness of the cycle. And I guess I don't want our white sisters to feel that they can't say something here, because I think it's important to hear.
Especially with the training aspect, that, the first meeting where it was brought up that the women of color wanted to separate pretty universally, because I talked to a number of the white women afterwards, there were feelings of hurt and abandonment, and I think, and there were even women who left around those feelings. And I think those of us who stayed really realized that we were dealing with, we talked about at Glide, we all cry. But at Glide, we all go beyond the tears, and going beyond the tears is empowering ourselves, living our lives. And I'm thinking about, in dealing with this issue, the meeting that we had where we invited all the women from the congregation to talk about trust. And Jan was talking about how trust is as an act of empowerment. The more people you have in your life that you trust, the more powerful you are. And I think that's part of what this group has done for us. And it became an issue of trust, of am I going to trust these women that they're really telling me honestly what they need. And if they're telling me honestly what they need in order to feel more powerful, and that's what we're all working on, and I want to come to a group where everyone feels empowered, then no matter how I feel, I'm not going to, what am I going to do? That's what we're all doing. So
you heard the need for the women of color to be together as a need, not as a rejection, not as an abandonment.
Well, and even if I felt the rejection, I was able to move beyond the feeling to the reality, to the reality, and then deal with that.
I think that was a time when we decided to have the cultural specific night that taught, and within our own selves, we had that trust issue. Because I know for me, I felt comfortable talking about the situation. Then I started to clam up, because when I was in the courtroom and on the witness stand, and I could see myself sitting in that circle, and it was like being back in the courtroom, everybody was white. And there were only 2 or 3 black faces to me. That's the way it looked, but it wasn't like that. But my mind was going back to that time in the courtroom, and those people that had nothing else to do but sit around courtrooms all day, retired people, and listen to the stories and the problems of the underprivileged people that couldn't afford the things that they had. So I felt pinned in. And when we decided to do the cultural specific night, I felt relieved, because for the first time, if I wanted to stand up in the middle of the floor and tell a bunch of women of color how I felt when they weren't there, or their families shut the doors and they didn't have enough guts to speak up and say, we're here with you, instead of worrying about, well, is my blonde, blue-eyed sister sitting over there listening to my story because she just wants to hear another story? It wasn't storytelling time. And another thing that made it seem more important to me was even though all of us know who's in our group, when we see one another, we don't look at one another and go, oh gosh, she's one of those kind. We look at each other with a genuine love and respect because we've been able to bring it out. And I think that when we divided the groups for that every other week, it encouraged the other group to get their issues out with themselves too, because I know there were some issues that you guys had to get out amongst yourselves that maybe you weren't able to say in the courtrooms, maybe you weren't able to say them at home, but you had a group that was just like you, and you could get it out. And for the first time in my life, when I was able to do that night, shared that anger and that hurt with a bunch of other women of color, it put some more money in my spiritual bank. And I no longer felt like, because of this incest issue, I still have to suffer from spiritual bankruptcy? No, I don't have to, because there's other people that know just what I'm feeling, and now we're able to deal with it. It doesn't make any of us any difference now if we sit in a room with all titty pink people. It don't make no difference, because we can all get it out, and we can feel comfortable getting it out. But let's face it, there were times when we first started that we didn't really feel uncomfortable about what we were doing. We were just doing it because something was saying, get it out, get it out. And now, we don't care. We can put it on video, put it on the record, and send it all over the world and let the rest of the world know, hey, wake up, it's happening in your house too.
And this is how to get started. This is how to open up.
One of the things that's so important with what we do here is that we like start on the inside, and then we take it back out, and we go back on the inside, we take it back out. You know, I mean, it was important for me that I didn't be in a group that just sat there and talked about the problem. I couldn't stand that. I've done that enough times. But, you know, doing the culture night, doing stuff with each other, you know, I mean, putting on presentations, that was like taking our pain and making it into something beautiful, making it into something valuable and worthwhile and powerful. You know, I couldn't stand the thought of just talking about it. You know, and that's what happened here. I mean, the culturally specific group for me allowed me to go inside, deep on the inside, and then move out some and share with, you know, with the bigger group, and then the congregation, and now, you know, I mean, I don't feel like Jean said, I don't feel any problem just saying I'm a survivor of incest. You know,
I think we've all taken the sheets and the blankets off of the mirrors in our houses. And we're all able to look at ourselves in the mirror. Because I know for many years when I would get up in the morning and look in the mirror, you had to be out your mind. Because there was nothing in that mirror that I was proud of, nothing in that mirror I wanted to see. I can get in the mirror now in the morning and be in there talking about, hey, beautiful, what's up?
Of 19 and about 35, there's not one picture of me. I never took pictures, And now you can't keep the camera. But there was not one picture of me, and I just refused to take pictures or with the mirrors or you know, anything that would have me look at me, you know, and not so much as somebody else seeing me.
I said mirror, live, and look at me now. I sit in front of the mirror and say, hey,
the challenge is makeup on and not look at yourself.
Yeah, right.
I could be like, okay, well, let's look at our life, let's look at our life. But never the whole face. It all would be like parts, pieces. You know, and you kind of like take a quick glance to make sure your colors are on right. Out the door. You know?
So I would challenge the mirror, okay? I would get in and I'd say, I'm really going to do something with my hair. But the minute my eyes met, the tears would come.
That's right.
All of a sudden, the pain would creep up, and I would, if my bathroom door was completely closed, I'd reach over and I'd push that door closed, because I'm going to be here a while, because of that glance in the mirror and catch a reflection of my own self. My own. I mean, that's so pathetically pitiful to look in a mirror and catch a reflection of myself, and all of a sudden the whole world goes dark for me. All of a sudden it's like going into a, okay.
You started about uncovering the mirror.
But you know something else? I got another secret to tell y'all. I no longer bathe in Clorox or Pure Rock. I am so dirty, I've got to get into a bathtub of bleach to get that dirt off. I can get me some bubble bath and go.
Rinse you out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Make your skin lighter.
And get rid of that dirt, because you done sinned and you're full of sin.
And make
So
you
you
come
gotta
out the
wash that
sun and
dirt
tell
off.
you how dark you was gonna be.
Oh, my mother did that. She put cucumber in the water. Is a cucumber a natural diuretic, right? Yes.
It would be,
You would be sitting there. If you had any silver, you were wrong.
Really drawn out, 5-year-old on the block.
You know, the mirror. That's a word.
Mirror stuff, because I have a mirror that I use with the women in the group. It's the affirmation angel. And one of the exercises that I have them to do is to look in the mirror and tell yourself, I love you. And I found that none of them can. When they first come in there, they cannot look in the mirror. And of course, I understand it, having gone through the mirror aspect myself, because for many years for me, I would look in the mirror and my face was actually distorted. It was distorted, and it fascinated me. I would continue to look at this person because I wanted to see just how ugly it could get. And then it would get so ugly where I couldn't look. You know, now it's not that way, but in working with my clients, I do use the mirror. And I'm in fact just had a young lady who had been coming to group, Angela, who's been working on her incest issues to do the mirror exercise. Where I tell you, I love you, I forgive you, God forgive you, and it's all okay. You know, but it's a process.
Yeah, the first time it happened to me years, I said from 19 to about 35, and looking, I was going through by a store window, and I just happened to, it happened to be in bedrooms and mirrors, and I started and I looked over there, and it was like I was totally destroyed. By the time I got to the end, I had to sit down almost on the sidewalk, and I cried. I cried. It was a horrible scene. It was really difficult for me to deal with me, you know. And it really was painful, and it was hurt, because in all those mirrors, I saw every form of abuse and pain that I have ever dealt with.
Yes.
And it was just the most horrible thing in the world. So I just stopped. I didn't want to ever be near a mirror. First thing I do with the children in the children's room is take them to stand in front of the mirror and stand behind them, because you need protection. Yes. And have them look at themselves.
Well, I would look in the mirror and see something else. I would see a blonde. I would see I would see, a white girl. I would see a light complected, I did.
I see Asian women dealing with that a lot. That wanting to be the blonde, blue-eyed girl. I see them a lot, and it really hurts me now. Having heard your story and what you said, I never knew that. But when I see these young women now trying to emulate their white girlfriend, this is when I go on market to go to Nordstrom's or something to eat, and I see they're struggling with that identity stuff, And
it's something. My daughter is streaking her hair. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, I see her.
She says, "But Mom, I am half white."
Even when I see myself, I still find myself, I look at figure faces and look at this, I still cannot.
I have an excuse, Edna, because if you look at yourself on video and you see yourself talking and listen to what you're actually saying, then you're actually looking in that mirror and you are dealing with Edna and those feelings, and that might be a part that you're really not ready to deal with yet.
Okay.
But it's okay to talk about it and get it out.
Your power.
My power is always, to me, comes out at me, okay? I hear my power. And at times I still feel so empty of my power. My power is not something that I walk around with or turn on or turn off. My power is something that comes from within, because I'm talking about what I'm talking talking about? So when it comes back at me from a screen, it's like, you know,
You scare yourself.
yes.
Yes,
Thank you
there you
very
go. I know
much.
that
Thank
feeling.
you.
I know that
You know,
feeling.
thank you. That's scary for me.
Yes, right.
That's scary for me, because then I don't, did I say that? You know what? You know, who is she? Wait, yo, okay. You know, it makes me have to be responsible for that power, though.
Yes.
That's another thing, see.
That's right.
That's another thing, see. See, I know that in order for me to see myself, to accept myself coming back at me,
That's what I was gonna say.
yeah, when it comes back at me, then that's my responsibility. I'm seeing. Yeah, you got it, and yeah, you got, yeah. And maybe that's the part, you know, I'll avoid seeing me play back.
But it's an expression of your power. And possibly, it might change somebody else. It might affect somebody else. And that's very hard to do.
Yeah.
For me to see.
It's hard for me to see when people, when I see things mirrored back from other people, you know, when I see people loving me or saying you did a good job, or something, that is really difficult. You know, I mean, that is like, it's like, whoa, you know.
I dissociate from it a lot.
Yeah.
Here we get down here. We're having a break now.
You know, my persona takes it on, and it doesn't, it can't come in, you know?
Yeah, it's a discount. It's like you,
Right,
Yeah,
right.
discount, right?
you look beautiful, then I go, honey, and it's a nice dress. You know, you didn't say it. The dress looks
So
good.
what is that? What is that?
If I had truly had power, I could have stopped.
I think for me, it's now. If I truly have that kind of power, then I can't tolerate, and then I have the responsibility, that's the responsibility of the power, not to tolerate any of that victimization, not one single day,
Yeah.
not one single
That's
moment.
it.
Yeah,
And that scares me, that
yeah.
responsibility. I mean, I want that responsibility, I want that power, I want to have it, and yet it's so discordant with those first 20 years of my life, or 25, or whatever, that it's just hard to
To balance it, yes.
How can you believe me? You know I'm a fraud, don't you? You know it's all bullshit, don't you?
Yes, yeah.
You know, I mean, that always.
Yeah, I used to say, well, I'm a great actress. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
And how can you go from a pauper to a prince in one lifetime? You know, here you were nothing, and then all of a sudden people
Right.
think
Yeah, now you're
it's
thinking
really
you're
kind of
something.
hard to believe. And I'm like you, it's difficult for me to look and see that that's me. You know.
Except that when people see you, each one of you, in your work, in your day-to-day, and you have to stand up for a client, or you have to stand up for the children, or you have to stand up for your sister, you have, you know, each moment, or you have to stand up for an aged person with age. I mean, you are the most powerful people I've ever seen in my life. Do you know what I'm saying? You are so powerful, you're so clear. If someone came after your kid, I'll bet that we would just have to clear the sidewalk. I mean, just like block off the streets. It would be so powerful. And what I'm saying is that I have seen Joyce, for example, change from being, okay, soft-spoken and now she's like, no, I ain't gonna take that shit. Why did you print that about? I mean, she is like a fireball, truly. And I really identify with that. I mean, I remember when I was trying to be so exotic and cute and so, you know, like passive and invisible, and the only thing that existed for me was my body. So I was fucking molds. You know, I mean, men who were like, excuse me, freaks. This isn't gonna go on this video. I have talked to women of color in groups where, you know, like, hey, you will have sex with men that should belong in a cage.
Why couldn't do that too?
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Because of our lack of self-esteem, because we think we are privileged to be asked by anything.
That's right.
Anything.
But you know, but your mother said something. I knew mine had something to do with that. When you get a man, oh, you know, my mother used to, that's the only time she paid attention to you. That new boyfriend, well, you know, fix your hair, do this, you know, or your stomach in, blah, blah, you know, because you know, you're on the meat market now, honey, and you got to get yourself together.
Yes,
you know, and now
I'm telling you many things like, don't speak loudly.
That's
don't
right.
eat,
Yes.
Don't argue, don't get mad.
That's right. Don't eat too much.
My mother
He
used to-
feeds you really. My mother used to feed us a lot before we went on dates because we had that like ladies, only eat salad when we went on dates.
My mother taught about
I know. The whole thing was to get this man. And now I'm in a situation of saying, hey, I don't give a care. I mean, all of a sudden I try to be that genteel, and all of a sudden I find myself saying, well, you said this and blah, 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 blah. Because, oh, God, here I blow my chances to get in the man. But I don't care. I mean, this is what my Glide family has done for me.
Yes.
That I am taking the risk. And I don't have to.
And for the
Go by
first
someone
time,
else's agenda.
I did my 46th birthday today, okay? And it was actually Monday, but my party was today here, right, with my family here, right? And for the first time, I knew they was gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I was gonna stay here until they did it. Oh, yo, because all the years I wanted to leave because I hated it. It was like, happy birthday, and then I go, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here's your gift. Thank you. Oh, please. Like, can we go back to work now? I feel better than price is selling. Can I just go back to work now? Get this shit over with. I have to do this. But no, y'all. No, not this time. No. Dave was like, where my cake?
Where
My present.
I'm in right here when I saw everybody out just swallowed. It was like, yes.
And she wanted to make sure who
I was
signed
on
the
the
card.
car. And I'm going to tell Jack to let me bring 30 kids. I was over there.
Yeah, Edna, but in a way, that's your power.
That's right.
But it feels so good to feel that way. It felt so good to walk in that room with all of the staff, sisters and brothers, and feel glad to see them, and not have to feel like unworthy of it, or to make when somebody give me a hug or happy birthday, to cut it short. To try to just stay busy. I was willing to serve at one time my own cake and ice cream just to keep busy. Just to keep busy, okay? But not today, not this time. Never again. Not this time, because see, I had that coming. But I have earned the right within me to know that whatever you see here is here 24/7 now. I don't sit here and go die another minute no more. See what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? I like to be able to watch this thing play back, okay? I'm telling you, her power is out. I don't think we should contain this.
And that's made it easier. Like with Edna, I've known Edna for years, and in the past year since we've had this group.
That's right.
I've seen a complete change in Edna, and it's like she's opened up, she's shedded her silence, and she can step out now. And it's like, I know exactly how you feel, because like when I did, the first time I did the announcements, and I mean, I spilled my guts.
Okay.
I said, ooh, I gotta get this tape. Okay. I have not heard that tape yet. I start to hear the tape, and then I stop. But tonight when I go home, I'm playing my game. I'm playing it. Because I can now say that when these people in this church listen to what I say, I won't hear the sound of doors slamming. And I was always afraid to speak out because I would always think that people would do like that other church did, shut the doors in my face. But then I have to stop and say, wait a minute, this is Glide. Ain't no closed doors in this church. And there's nobody turned away. And nobody is not questioned about their spirituality.
Yeah, I felt the same way about Mother's Day. I never really listened. And now I put the tape on almost every day and turn the volume up. Yes, indeed, and listen to us talk.
Are you serious?
Because it gives me the strength I need. I'm almost be able to recite everybody's piece in there.
What would we have done? What would I have done if I'd have been stuck with recovery from drugs and not recovery from rape, from pain? You see, because what did it to me was when I stopped using, everybody thought I was supposed to be all right, and I had to act
All right.
Pretend.
Because then if I told you how hurt I still was, you'd be scared I was going to use again. And I wasn't using, so I didn't want to act like I was using. I was clean, you know, so then I'm supposed to be normal. So then I was trying to act, ACT, big old giant letter word, act, okay. And thinking, okay, I'm normal, I'm all right, I don't get high. You know, and that was supposed to be, so there I was stuck between a balance of, I don't get high, I still hurt like fuck. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But now see, now I don't get high, but I don't hurt like that no more neither. But I had to do both things. I have to be here, like the drugs, I had to be there. But they don't go like together. Both of them, I need both. I need only recovery is whole, not balance. I got some balance. So there you go.
This group has showed me the true meaning of that expression, the truth shall set you free. Because once we all started dealing with the truth, and what was really hurting us, it was like we were all released from that slave block. So now if I tell somebody the truth should set you free, I not only mean it, but I feel it and I live it.
Yes.
And like Cecil says so many Sundays, you cannot tell nobody about nothing unless you have lived it yourself.
Hello.
You know, it's like I look at a person in recovery from drugs, and I can't tell them what recovery is like if I haven't been there. But I can tell them that at 22 years old, I had a stomach habit for cocaine. I craved cocaine like a pregnant woman has cravings in her first 3 months of pregnancy. I had to have that cocaine. But I realized that all the drug centers in the world, all the Betty Ford centers will not cure you if you don't have the willpower to cure yourself. And I got that here at Glide. I didn't get that at one of those $5,000 recovery centers that you go to, you know. My job didn't send me nowhere. I got the truth right here in my face. And like the record said, it didn't cost me nothing. But the ability to be willing to face the truth, deal with myself from inside out, and accept the people that were around me and that wanted to help me. It's like when I come to Glide, sometimes I can be driving up the street and I'll get ready to turn the corner at the light and I'll think of that song, Doctors, Lawyers, Indian Chief. And I think about it, I say, that's it. We got it all right there. We got it from the rich man, poor man, to the beggar man and the thieves. We got it all right here. And that's what makes us all gel. And that's what makes us keep going. And sometimes when I say, I don't feel like doing it, I'm quitting, I'm through, I've had enough. Some say, I need you. And the words I hate to hear most, any Sunday I come to churches when Cecil get up and say, I need you. Because I know the minute he says, I need you, all of us that laugh behind his back say, I ain't answering this time. They say, that's right. You're the first ones up front.
Where's that sign up? Nothing that you can sign it up.
That's the spirit in us.
And that's the spirit in here. And one of the things that happens always is I can bring all myself here. You know, I can bring my happy self, I can bring my sad self. I can have Jan tease me about being a codependent. You know, she'll say, oh, you're so super responsible. And it's okay. I don't end up feeling ashamed. I can have, you know, and they teach me like, you're so serious, girl. Like, no, you know, and it's like, I don't feel like I've done something. And if I do something wrong, you know, or make a mistake, it's okay. And I've never been any place in my life where making a mistake was okay. It was not okay for me to make a mistake. I made a mistake and that meant, again, there was something wrong with me, but I get to bring all of it. I get to laugh, I get to act silly, I get to be serious, I get to be powerful, I get to be confused. I can walk around and go, I don't know. Don't you?
You're a good girl.
You know, I couldn't do that before. I felt like if I said I was confused, I had committed a real supposed to know what I was doing at all times. I mean,
But that's because you're an incest survivor, you have to be in control too, and you have to be perfect. And I think we all identify with that. I also think that this Glide family means that we don't have to blame one another. You don't have to pass judgment on one another. You don't have to put each other down because that fills some crazy hole inside of us. It's such a strange feeling that I can say to you and you can say to me, don't be so serious, or don't be so codependent, don't be whatever, and it not be a criticism, it not be a put down. It can be a joke, it can be like a corrective statement. See, I think that that's a difference too, is that we can correct each other and it not be a criticism, it not be a put down or a rejection. And that's so important, it really is. Be able to say, gee, that hurt me, I think that, you ignored me on that one, or, this is the effect that particular action had, and make it be a corrective thing as opposed to slamming you up against the wall.
That's right. I wanted to say that it wasn't very long ago that I was standing in your office and we was talking because I wanted to speak to you about a personal problem that I was having, and I said something like, you probably think I'm crazy, but it's like, I can never see myself saying that to a preacher's wife before.
Did I agree?
Well, for me, no, I was scared to come back here. I was really scared because, I've talked about it, in these groups about me being 16 and having a nervous breakdown and, being in an institution. And, so it's like, okay? And she knows what I'm talking about.
Cecil gets up there asking me if he can tell the story in front of church. He's telling everybody. I met a friend of mine that I knew in the nut house all those years ago.
But then he said, and I can top that.
Yeah.
He said, I was in the nut. I went crazy when I was 8.
Yeah, right. But I can come back and feel all right. Yeah. I can come back and feel all right. And she's not, and Jan's not judging me. But I was scared. Yeah. But I had to say that because I want to say something else too, and that has to do with the cultural specific group. And I want to say this because there might be someone that's black and Japanese like me who might be going through the same stuff that I went through and not being able to get that pain out. But it was important for me to be in the culturally specific group with women of color, and especially African American women. Because I put myself, my mother being Japanese, and my father being African American, and then being molested or raped by those male black men in my family. It's like being odd. Yeah. But then being with African American women and being able to talk about it, and they saying that, my African American father, he did this to me, and for me it helps. It would be, this is the first time that I'm saying this with the white sisters, okay? Okay. And I think just being able to be with the women of color and talk about those kind of issues just among ourselves, I just kind of feel like it makes us a little bit more stronger and bond more with.
That's right.
I can relate to that as a lesbian. Being in a heterosexual society, I could relate to that needing to be with my lesbian sisters on a lot of levels and relate so that I can come out and relate with the straight world. But I know the strength that I get from being with those people who are just like me in ways that other people can't understand. And I don't have that experience of being a person of color, and I never will. And it's different.
That's right.
And I'm a part of the majority there. I'm the one that had that's never an issue for me, being out there in the world. And I know how important it is to get your strength in a safe place. So you see,
All right. Hey, home talk about. Come on, say it. Write this one down. Get it, girl. I know it. Nobody goes.
No, that's fine. We're just gonna have
You told me that pee.
Oh, my word.
2 minutes.
I want to thank Cecil and Jan and the Black community for empowering me to be a much stronger person. I'm happy that weekend that I was when I was dealing with the secrets of being an incest survivor.
I used to use my dreaming just to try to survive. And it really was beyond my capacity to imagine to be in a circle like this. Beyond my capacity. And I thank God that I did survive and that I got beyond my dreams to new dreams that I couldn't even imagine.
I want to thank you all, my sisters. The experience of being here is incredible, beyond anything I thought that could happen. You all just are, I see those you powerful women and think, well, maybe I can do that too. And thank you.
I want to thank God, and I want to thank children for making me realize that the dream never dies. I want to thank Jan for pushing at the midwife, giving us birth, giving me birth, and I want to thank Cecil for marrying Jan.
Oh, I don't know what to say. I just, this place has really opened me up to letting love into my life. And there's no greater gift than that.